There's no money in music.
There's no money.
Music.
There's no money in music.
There's no money in actual music because in the digital era that
there's no money in music because she's not getting paid from it, but she is known as an artist. I feel like Lady London probably gets more on appearance fees than anything.
But it's a fact that there is money in music.
What's going down, MEC? We are back with another episode. Erinn's back, and I am no longer on tour.
Yeah, but I had to give some sound effects for that. For Erinn being back. My bad.
And you interrupted. I was about to debut a new motto for the show, which is, and I'm sorry, I'm not giving credit because I forgot who posted it as a comment on the MEC channel, but someone said, "We live it, so we give it." So this is MEC, the music business podcast, where we live it, so we give it. I like that one. I like that. He said he was high or something that came up with that. So I guess that's the trick.
I got to work on the timing of my sentence. Okay.
One day you'll be an annoying club DJ and you'll get it.
That's literally what I was thinking about, Dame being a club DJ.
Some people hate that. Some people complain all the time. I'll walk in and I'll accidentally hit that button once during sound check and someone will come up looking all nervous and say, you're not going to do that all night, are you? I'm like, I might now.
Yeah. Anyway, I know we got some great topics lined up. Before we get into it, just know that this episode is brought to you by Too Lost. If you want 3 months free music distribution, just want to give it a try. Even if you're using something else, at least log in and explore the dashboard, see what features are there. Check it out. Use the code MEC, get 3 months free. We also have an app. Please download the app. It's available in Google Play and Apple stores. Like your feedback on that, too. The app is, in my opinion, pretty sleek. You can pretty much do everything you can on the desktop version within the app. So, yeah, we'd love your guys' feedback. Put it in the comments. But let's jump into this. I know that.
Well, wait, I was in a meeting. I was in a meeting the other day, and shout out to Tyler and Rob Dees. He was looking. One of them was looking for a new distributor. And then the other one suggested Too Lost and was like, why don't you just use Payne's free trial? And it was weird because I was in the conversation, but I wasn't the one who brought any of that up. So shout out to that situation. So we're going to jump into the topics. This first one.
We definitely got to do our wins.
Oh, our wins.
Every week we like to share our wins. What was the tagline? We live it, so we give it, get it, give it.
Yeah, give.
Yeah.
So we gotta share our real world wins and losses. Maybe we should share losses too at some point. I got to come up with a clever name for that because Share Your Wins Wednesdays just kind of has a ring to it. I think we should share our L's as well at some point. But anyway, Erinn, what you got for us this week?
I'll give you two. Like last week I was out because I was at the Capitol. I went to Grammys on the Hill. And originally I was just supposed to go to the gala event and then not go to the Capitol. I was just going with a client to the gala, but they were kind of like short on bodies and they asked me to come. And I was not happy because it's just not my world. I don't want to be in that world. But I'm so glad that I went because I learned so much about the strategy around pitching bills and even the way that the Grammys moves through the world to make sure that they're advocating for artists and creatives, especially on the independent side, which was really cool for me to see. So No Labels Necessary posted Harvey, who is the president and co-CEO of the Grammys, making the speech and reintroducing the bill. And there are a lot of people complaining and saying shit and like, why wasn't this bill already introduced? And this and this and this. And I just went through and answered a few things. I'm like, this is actually a reintroduction of the bill, yada, yada, yada. This is the strategy. So for me, it confirmed a lot of biases that I had, I'll say, about politics, because there's certain moves you got to make just to make things happen. But it was also very cool to see the strategy and the intention behind it. And then my second one is I'm in Austin. Y'all know I'm damn near here all the time, live here more than anything. And we had an event this weekend and it just was incredible. The biggest event we've thrown thus far in Austin. And then we took over the Kids Museum yesterday and that was really cool. So just seeing all of the work that we put in Austin really taking off. So those are my wins.
Oh, oh shit. Where's the applause?
Damn, you're laughing at me.
Hold on. I thought there was an applause here. It says applause, but it's a laugh. I think that's what threw me off. My bad. Anyway.
Okay, yeah, you laughing at my wins. Okay, got it.
My bad. Payne, what you got?
Okay, so I completed my tour. I learned a lot. It was a different experience for me. It was great. And then when I got back, we got a sync placement. So I sold the beat exclusively because of an incoming sync placement. So I'm anticipating the sync agreement coming through the pipeline. But yeah, that was a good thing to come back home to.
Nice.
That's fire.
I'm not gonna try the applause again, because the applause is really a laugh. Anyway. My win is I had 4 conversations for the Independent Living podcast that I'm excited to drop. Got to edit and drop them at some point in the near future. One was with a cat named Party's Over. He's a videographer, and I felt like this was my first time like having a videographer on. For me, my opinion, if you're an artist, like that would be the first role that I felt that I would feel if I didn't know how to do it myself. Somebody that can really capture me visually. The video and the visuals have to be on point. He recently did some work with an artist named Red Lotus, and the video went crazy. So I reached out to him and we had a cool conversation. So that's one. Another one is a cat named Larizi from Louisiana, young cat, starting to do his thing. So that was a cool conversation. And then I had 2 1-week notice alums, Daisha McBride and J-Zac, and we had a really good conversation. Daisha's conversation was super interesting. Her top revenue stream is syncs. So I think that's the first person on the Independent Living podcast where their top revenue stream came from syncs. So it was a cool conversation. So I'll get those out, hopefully drop one maybe this week, but definitely next week. So check them out I'm going to keep putting the conversation on this channel, on the Music Entrepreneur Club channel. So yeah, check those out. Anyway, let's jump into the topics. What do we got?
So today we're going to talk about street marketing and not giving up on being innovative. We're going to talk about when you should listen to your fans. We have a really cool producer conversation that we're going to have, and then potentially a conversation around creating what you envision or not being too precious with your art. It just depends on how much time we have.
Let's jump into that producer combo, Payne.
I was thinking about how depressing it is being a music producer, even one that's had success. I've worked with Baby Keem, Travis Scott, Kehlani, Super Duper Kyle, a lot of people. And I still feel like a fucking scrub, bro. It's so depressing because you're so dependent on other people in order for you to like have motion. You know what I mean? It's like no matter how many beats you're making, you can make 10 beats a day for 300 days in a row. If somebody doesn't release one of the songs, then it doesn't mean anything. And even if they record to it, and you're like, oh yeah, I got a song with Don Toliver, I got a song with so-and-so. They can record 1 million songs if they don't ever drop them, and then when they drop them, they don't use it as a single. And if the single doesn't do numbers, then it's just like, it's pointless. Yeah, being a producer is super depressing. But if you're a music producer, just keep going, I guess.
Just keep
that
going.
Last sentence. Yeah, right. It's really, thank you, Brick. That was really, it was really helpful, especially this early in the morning.
I know a lot of people, the never give up crowd. That's not me. That's not advice I give. I understand the people that say, hey, never give up. You only fail when you quit. That ain't the advice. You'll never hear me say that, because there are definitely times where I think people should give up, but they shouldn't look at it like that. Like sometimes you got to give up to get to your true blessings, to get to your true calling. Like, not everybody's called to do this, and there's not a space for everyone that thinks they are called to do this. So I'm not in that crowd, but I like this topic because I relate to it as a manager, like the part of being dependent on other people, right? And that's why I do so many other things, like different projects that I feel like I have complete control of, because I don't like being in a position where I can't move until the artist moves. Like, even if you got the greatest idea possible as a manager, you have to then get the artist to believe it's the greatest idea possible, then you probably got to try to get them to somehow convince them that it was their idea in order for them to put their full foot forward. And that's so fucking frustrating. It's just like, man, why can't we just go? So from that angle, I definitely like can relate, because I don't like being dependent on other people. But Payne, you're the producer here. You know, weigh in. Do you feel him? Suggestions for him? You know?
Oh yeah, I mean, he's super successful and super dope. So he doesn't fall into the camp of people who should give up, in my opinion. But I think what he's saying is real. I know as a producer, I feel like giving up and quitting and doing something else no fewer than 3 times a week. So I think he was in that mode when he shot that video, and it resonated. And you know, Brick has a lot going on. And shout out to him. I don't know him, but I'd like to connect with him. He's a multi-platinum producer. I mean, we're both multi-platinum producers, but I think he said in that video he was 10 times platinum. So that's more than me. I'm like 4 or 5, but he runs Ebony Beach Club. He does a lot of stuff. And
oh, that's the Ebony Beach Club guy.
Yeah. And EBC is big.
Whoa.
What is that? I'm not familiar.
It's like damn near a lifestyle brand.
Yeah, but he actually has parties on the beach and like just really encourages Black people to be out in the water and like on the sand. He threw a party, I think, during like 2020 or 2021, and it got shut down because so many people gathered for it. And then they threw another one like a year later, and they got the permits and everything for it. And then they got shut down again, and they're like, this is a race problem because people don't see this many Black people gather on the beach. So then he leaned into it harder and was like Ebony Beach Club. So it is a lifestyle brand. They have merch. They do meetups all over, but it's just encouraging Black people to gather outside and be in the water.
Yeah. Well, I think it seems like he's already doing what I would suggest, right? Like if you got to figure out what you can do that you do have control over, right? As a producer, I would think it's like, you know, having a beat store and doing a lot of stuff that Kenny Beats does, you know, putting out your own albums, like stuff like that. I'm assuming that's kind of the direction you'd head with the advice, Payne.
Well, I would say, well, why aren't you leasing beats? You know, because that's exactly what we spoke about last week when Erinn wasn't around. I said, you know, as a producer, you are effectively dependent on artists and labels. If that's the role you want to play as a producer and you're trying to get placements, then yeah, you're going to have to play that waiting game all the time. As a matter of fact, in 2010, I named an album that I dropped the waiting game exactly because of this, because you just have to wait and wait and wait until the artist records to the beat, wait until if they even respond, if they even let you know that they listen to it, and then you have to wait for them to say they're done with the beat and they like it, then you have to wait for it to actually be approved for an album. And then you have to wait for them to send you the check, which could take a year after they sent you the agreement, which is always delayed. And then I've gotten to that point and the song still doesn't come out on the project. I got a couple $1,000s in my pocket and I'm like, okay, the song comes out. This happened on the Game's album, Jesus Piece. And yeah, they paid me half. The song never came out on the album. And then years later, the song's out on the Spotify version. And I'm like, I need to get paid the rest. So those kinds of situations will absolutely test your patience. But I can also understand why a producer who, I don't know Brick personally, but I'm just guessing that he, like a lot of other producers, just loves making music, and that's the core of his spirit. And so telling someone, why don't you just jump on lives like Kenny Beats, or why don't you develop artists like Timbaland, whatever advice you're giving them, that might not be where their heart is. And what's frustrating, I imagine, is as a producer, I always thought once I reached a certain level, things would change. Once I got a placement, things would change. Once I got multi-platinum, things would change. Once I got hit songs, things would change. And it still feels like I'm doing the same old thing and going through facing the same struggles. So maybe that's something else that he's going through as well, where it's like, I'm producing at such a high level that I'm 10 times platinum. And yet I'm still not getting the deference that I feel like I should deserve at minimum as someone with this track record, as someone with this level of talent and dedication. And, that is kind of the reality. I don't know how to change that, because if I did, I would have changed it for myself. I guess maybe developing artists, is that where you're going with? Was that the direction you were going in, Dame?
Well, yeah, just coming up with more ideas that you have complete control over. But I wanted to just on one of so putting out projects, Metro Boom, like if you're getting the verses, you have and you're putting together the project, obviously you have control over, when it comes out. But I wanted to get back to one thing that you just mentioned, because I wanted to push back a little bit if producers are saying this, like, hey, yeah, I can do these other things, but that's not where my heart is. How is that any different from an artist saying, like, yeah, I could promote my music, but I don't do TikTok because that's not where my heart is? Like, we all have to do things that we don't want to do.
Yeah, we do.
If we want to get to a certain place. So I understand and I can resonate with a lot of what he's saying, but in this day and age, we all have to kind of step out of our comfort zone and do things that we don't want to do if we want to get to where we say we want to get to.
I agree to an extent, because I think becoming a streamer is an entirely different identity. And it's not a trajectory that easily folds back into your core of being a music producer, because you can be a streamer without being a music producer. You can't really be a successful artist without fans. And so you have to market your music. That's just kind of a universal. But
that's not necessarily true, because what he's saying with what he said at the beginning with Daisha, like her number one stream of revenue is sync. I know an artist who has maybe 30,000, 40,000 monthly listeners and like 10,000 subscribers on YouTube. But same thing, Music Bed is like, he's making almost 6 figures a year off of that and doesn't really have a fan base. I think it does. And then if we're even using the producer who we're using as an example, like Ebony Beach Club has nothing to do for real with production, but I think he had developed a community of people, just, maybe some in the music world, some not. So it's exploding because of the people he was able to market it with. But I do think, to Dame's note, there has to be a level of sacrifice and diversification, like a willingness to step outside of what is the traditional, even like linear thought process that I would have as a producer. But I also do get what you're saying. It's like, everybody doesn't want to start 16 different side businesses to attribute to what they're doing. But I think that's what makes the production, I think that's what makes the music game hard. Like what you explained about the waiting game is like why so many producers aren't going to be successful. It's not that your beats aren't good, and it's not that you aren't making beats consistently, because you could be doing that. But to get into the rhythm of consistently pushing them out, waiting for checks, and making more in the process, and then having massive wins, but knowing that that's not going to feed your family and make your future matter. And you got to keep going through that. That's something that people don't realize about the music industry. The reason that I have to keep going and putting up so many shots consistently is because none of that shit matters in a week or a month. Like we sold out a show that didn't bring any money my way. I still got to pull up and do music biz and do the podcast every week, and then build this project and build that project. Like it all has to build to something. So I do think that this is a very interesting conversation, because any way you slice it, you got to do more than you bargained for.
Yeah. And that's the way that the industry has trended, as much as I do think now is the best time ever to be an independent creator, but it definitely requires more than what it used to require, 10 years, 15 years, fucking 5 years ago. That's just kind of nature of the beast, but it's not specific to producers at all. I feel like everybody has to evolve. But ultimately I think that's why I resonated with it. And I think there's options, right? Like you don't have to be a streamer. There's a lot of things that you can do. There's a lot of ways to get creative around, building community and kind of sharing your story.
If he already has EBC, he could be making beats during that. That could be a feature of Ebony Beach Club, and he could call it Ebony Beats Club or something. I don't know. And it could be him connected to the system and making beats inspired by the vibe and the energy of the party on the water. You know what I mean?
Him with that, because that sounds wavy as shit. No pun intended.
Clearly he's really into the EBC. He likes, but I go on his Instagram. He's in a swimsuit and damn near, 80% of the photos. And maybe it's 50-50 between beats and beach. But combine the two, if maybe he's tried this already. I don't know. If I'm him, I don't want to be live streaming. I want to be on the beach if I'm not making music. You know what I mean? So maybe combine the two passions. I don't know. I think it is hard to reconcile. I think you do have to do stuff that you don't want to do. But if I'm doing something I don't want to do, it has to be connected to what I want to do. I think that's, if they're too disparate, then I don't want to do them. I want to do them far less. And I recognize that even if I excel in this one thing that I don't want to do necessarily, it's not going to help me in the way that it should, given the amount of effort. In other words, if someone's like, yeah, why don't you develop more artists? I don't know. Artist development as a producer is, I think, even more frustrating than chasing placements. Because at least if I'm chasing placements, I can make 20 beats a week and send those 20 beats out to 100 different artists, and I've increased my odds. But if I'm developing an artist, I can realistically only put my attention into one or two artists and really focus on them. And if one day they wake up, they're like, you know what? I just want to get my girlfriend pregnant and quit. I just want to get pregnant by my man and quit. I just want to chase party life and quit. You know what? I don't like the way you're talking to me because you keep telling me what to do based on the schedule that we mutually agreed upon. And I don't like that shit. Fuck you. I'm going to go on a Facebook rant about you. I'm out. Like, that happens all the time. And that's all it's going to take to break your spirit, waste all the time you've invested. And it could have been years. And in those years' time, you could have used all that energy to build some equity in some assets for yourself. But when you go that route, you're always looking at the other side like, damn, this part sucks. Like he's saying in the video, chasing placements. But again, you never know what can happen. So it's a psychological minefield.
I feel like artist development only works if it's charitable, in my opinion.
I mean, look, you can talk yourself out of trying anything, right? Because a lot of things are going to have downsides. But the truth of the matter is there's a lot of things to try. And it sounds like, at least in his case, he already has like a great brand that he's built and can kind of, whether it's paying suggestion, whether it's coming up with a project for Ebony Beach Club, and that's like the soundtrack too. Like he's got some options, and I think we all have options, and there's just got to get creative.
I wouldn't sell nothing. Don't get about sweet little death reach to my left hand side, y'all. Nah, I don't swing those left. I miss that. Tú hablas inglés? Más o menos. Yo necesito aprender español.
Was that olive oil that he poured so liberally in that pan? Because that's like $80 worth of olive oil.
I'm gonna call that out too.
I don't know.
Do we not want to watch it? It's probably just going to make us hungry.
He basically just starts giving out plates, but what you played is I think adequate enough because I wanted to show off some of the opulence. That's part of it, right? So this is a chef. You see at the beginning of this scene, there is like whoever's running the park stops and is like, you can't sell anything here. He's like, I'm not selling anything. I'm giving it away. I wouldn't sell anything here because, you got to have the permits or whatever.
They sell plates in my neighborhood at the park.
Yeah. So you can see even when he gets out, he's dressed very nicely. He's getting out of a nice car. And then, as Payne points out, he's pouring like $100 worth of olive oil liberally into a very, 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 very nice stainless steel pan. So if you know anything about cooking or the culinary world, you can already tell that he probably makes a significant amount of money being a private chef or whatever he's doing, or at least a decent living, because his materials are so nice. Even the pepper that he pulls out and he's scraping out the seeds, he has a fresh pepper that you usually have to get canned. So he's buying good ingredients from good places, all these different things. I think a lot of times people believe that once they've made it to a certain level, that they can just chill or coast, or that things should just naturally come to them. And even though it wasn't meant, you spoke on Keke Palmer. I think she's an incredible example of a celebrity who said, I'm not waiting for my answers to come from somebody else. A lot like what we were talking about with Ebony Beach Club and that producer. It's like, I'm going to continue to make this wheel spin and make it spin faster and faster while I'm able-bodied, while I have ideas, while I have time. Because I think a lot of people get caught up in what they have now or what they're working towards. And they're like, well, I'm just going to do this thing and it's going to take off. And it's just, the world doesn't work that way anymore. I know so many people who have done well for a really long time and then have completely fallen off because they thought that the trend would just continue and they could rest. And I've heard so many successful millionaires and billionaires talk about how you could be making millions time and time again and just lose it. And it's the work ethic that they're confident in that can bring it back. They're like, my resources, my relationships, but mostly my work ethic. And I think that this is just a telltale sign of, like, one, you should never stop working. But two, I think that you should be innovating regardless. I've never seen a chef on the street just giving out plates, especially one of this quality. And I think that it may not be his target audience per se, but he knows that putting it on the internet is probably going to help him reach his target audience, or at least pique some curiosity. Or maybe it's that he ends up coming across a feed of somebody who has hired him before. And they're like, oh yeah, I forgot X, Y, and Z is good at this, this, and this. So I saw this video. I was really encouraged by it. And I love when people hustle in a way that they enjoy. Like we were just saying, when Payne was like, well, maybe you don't want to go on stream. Maybe you don't want to do this. Find ways that you enjoy. Like, clearly this man loves cooking and has a passion for it and is doing an incredible job at it. So he said, cool, I'm going to take my passion to the streets. Like, you're not making money if you're just at home. If you have a service-based industry, you're probably losing money because you're not acquiring customers. So this is a customer acquisition cost that he's spending his own money to go set this up and having a videographer. But it's like, nobody knows the impact. He may spend enough, one day, and that he can make that in one meal when he's cooking for somebody. So I just want to encourage everybody, continue to keep thinking about, if you're stuck in this cycle of, I don't enjoy this thing, figure out what you enjoy and then go do that thing somewhere that's going to amplify your platform in a way that you can come back and consistently do what you enjoy. But also, don't get stuck in, I only enjoy this. Your life will not be enjoyable if you're only focused on doing things that you enjoy. What
I take from this that I think people can also pull from it is, you got to try stuff. Like, just we're in an era now where you just try things. Worst case scenario, it doesn't get any views, and then you just try something else. You got to find the right combination so that you get that feedback loop, so that you now know kind of what works, what doesn't work. The stuff that I'm doing with Big Ja and the collective that we're working with. So we're starting on Monday, actually. Starting Monday, we'll be dropping a sketch every single day under the brand The Whole Crew is Stupid. But we already have ideas for like level 2 and 3 of this. But I don't think we would have such a clear plan if we didn't shoot so many shots over the past 6-7 years. So the worst thing to do is nothing, right? Not try anything. But I also think it's dope that what this cat did, and it showed the importance, going back to, my independent living conversation, the importance of the videographer and being able to capture these moments. Because this guy, he may have the skill set, but he may not have. And I thought that was a pretty well done video, capturing people enjoying the food, asking the questions, the language barrier, the exchange between English and Spanish. Like those little subtle moments, I think, kind of make some of that video. And that's why it's so important to have that person on the team. Like, I don't give a shit. No manager, no disrespect, Payne, but not a producer. I can't think of anybody more important than a videographer in this day and age if you don't have that skill set. If you don't have a videographer, I would suggest you acquire that skill set. And again, just try different things, use these AI tools and things to kind of make your visuals pop. But no, I think it's dope. I'm hungry now. Like I need some food. So
I want to maybe next week cover a musical equivalent of what this guy's doing, and it's that producer that you keep bringing up, Erinn, because his videos have been suggested left and right on all platforms. I think I just watched one of them, and then you know how the algorithm is, so definitely want to cover that.
Yeah.
But what else are we getting into? Do you want to get into?
There's a lot of interesting kind of things that are working. And again, it's not only you trying things, but it should also, don't spend time on Instagram just like mindlessly scrolling. You can spend time like getting ideas. One of Michael Manelli's videos recently went viral. He's a singer. I think he's based in Arizona. But he does one of those, like, he sets up the table in the middle of the street and he like has a sign says, "Can you rap?" or something like that. And then he recently did one with Kennedy Ryan and she's like, "I can't rap, but I sing." And they just did an amazing performance like in the middle of the street, but it's part of a series that he does. So long story short, well, one, check that out. But two, like, hopefully your scrolling is not only just you entertaining yourself, but you're getting ideas, suggestions for your own content to try. So start shooting your shots.
And I think living outside versus being on the internet all the time will help you develop ideas, because when artists are like, everybody does street stuff, I'm like, in Austin, Atlanta, and Nashville, I could count on one hand how many times I've seen somebody doing street content. Now, New York and LA, it's a lot more common, but it's still not crazy. Like, it's not like there's more street vendors than there are people doing street like moments. Do you know what I'm saying? And a lot of times it's because the people who do them know their times, they know their moments, they know when they should be doing it, they do it, you know what I'm saying? And that's because they've developed the skill set. So like, get over yourself, first of all, just go try something. And even if it's just to establish or to shake your fear of approaching new people, just try something. And it doesn't have to be street style, like videos and stuff. I had a friend text me a few days ago, like, I'm struggling to pull the trigger on my first event because I'm just nervous that it won't go well. I was like, it's going to suck. Just accept that. Like, what? It's your first event. Nobody's going to come. You're going to spend money and you're going to be frustrated. And I said, on the off chance that doesn't happen, congratulations, but you're going to learn more from the failure than the success. I think so many people are looking for success as a win. The success is that you failed and got closer to your win because you know you don't need to do that, or you shouldn't do it this way, or you should have tried this. But you don't know that unless you put up a ton of shots. It's like somebody picking up a basketball and shooting a three and hoping they make it and then being like, I'm never going to play basketball again. It's like, beloved, you just picked up the basketball. How about you try to put up maybe 100 shots and see if you make 2 or 3. If you make 2 or 3 out of your first 100, then to me, that's indicative that you should stay on this path. So I think that a lot of people have to get over their fear of failure. Like, failure isn't a negative thing. I've never seen it as that because I grew up playing sports. I grew up with parents who were not helpful when it came to me like tripping. If I fell, they'd say, get up, right? Like obviously if I'm like bleeding, it really hurt, but they'd be like, you're fine. Like, you fell. Even when I would scrape my knee, my mom would be like, okay, you know where the Band-Aids are? Like, do you need some help? Like, are you know what I'm saying? Like, but they would talk me through stuff, but they would let me suffer. And I don't think it's really suffering per se, but I think a lot of times people are just, they've coddled themselves because the world doesn't do this to us. But then we justify it as, well, you don't want to be uncomfortable. But the truth of the matter is, by not executing your idea, you're extremely uncomfortable because you realize you're not living up to your potential. So just go do the thing. It's going to suck. You're going to be terrible at it. And then do it again and do it again and do it again. And after you do it again, maybe 100 times and it really still sucks, maybe just quit and try something new. But now you have the tenacity and the wherewithal and the understanding. And that's where I agree with Dame. When Dame says, I'm not the type of person who just says, just keep going. I quit management. That shit sucks. I'm never going back to management. But I did it after years and years of trying it in so many different ways with so many different people, so many different artists, partnerships, individually, all sorts of things. So when I came out, I had a master toolkit of successful different types of tools and understandings. And so it's now whatever I do is going to be successful because I developed a trend of trying, right? And a trend of doing, even when it failed. And that's what I want to encourage y'all. Create a trend of doing. Like, it's going to fail. That's the point. Like, I work in the design thinking space a lot now instead of just traditional consulting. Consulting says, I'm going to give you an answer. Design thinking says, I'm going to get you a failure quickly so that we can start to design an answer that works actually for the problem you're trying to solve. And so that's why I think that most people should live life. Just run towards the failure because you have to get that in under your belt before you get to your win.
So the topic that I want to bring up is, should artists be giving other artists advice? I recently stitched a video yesterday. Lady London was on Sway's show, and she was saying that there's no money in music. And I don't want to have this debate because to me, it's not a debate. Like, I can show you that, I can prove to you it's factual that there's money in music. Now, if you don't consider like that amount of money, like money to you, like that's maybe a separate conversation. If you want to debate if payouts are fair, like that can be a separate conversation. But it's a fact that there is money in music. It's a fact that people are living off their music. So when she says in the interview that there's no money in music, it just made me, once again, because I think about this a lot, because I see a lot of bad advice from artists. And, you know, obviously I think that they can give, especially if you're successful, you know, you can talk about your journey and the things that made you successful. A lot of those things apply across the board. However, there are so many different paths to success. I feel like as an individual artist, you travel one path and then you start giving advice that are probably make sense for that particular path, not realizing or not understanding, like how I like to refer to like the entire game of like, you could have went that way, maybe even had more success, maybe less success, but you didn't, you know, that path. And now you're telling artists you're entrenched in your ideas because you have the experiences and the know-how for that path. But there's so many other ways. So that's why I think a lot of the advice is bad, because artist advice is so specific.
Personal. It's so personal and emotional.
Yeah, so specific.
Because they're artists.
So specific to that individual experience. So, and I love Lady London. I've been following Lady London for a long time. She's super talented. But I think she's speaking from her experience when she said, like, there may be no money in how you like make music. And that might be because like you spent so much to make it. That might be because it just hasn't picked up the traction. That might be because you're in a deal and you're not seeing the money. So I didn't want to have a conversation specifically about her, but just in general, like, should you listen to artists' advice?
I think, you know, if you're trying to do what they're currently succeeding at doing, then they can give you good advice. I see that all the time. There are certain artists that are really, truly DIY. Every time Ted comes out here, for example, I get advice from him on video, for example. He told me to download the Blackmagic app. He motivates my friend Memory and just kind of explains what things you can control in your career, what ideas he might have if he were him, that kind of thing. You know, the kind of stuff that we do here when it comes to an artist who's frustrated, for example, like the producer Brick we talked about earlier, that kind of thing, brainstorming, creative brainstorming. I think anyone who speaks in absolutes and is trying to discourage you and says something that is easily verifiable. So Lady London said there's no money in music anymore. Well, the reality is, and all the fuck you have to do is Google it, 69% of the global music industry is streaming now. Okay, is that encouraging or discouraging? Well, there's no money in the music business, so it must be shrinking and not expanding. Well, if you look at the statistics, what it says is global recorded music revenues have shown consistent growth, with the IFPI Global Music Report indicating a 4.8% increase in 2024, reaching $29.6 billion. This marks the 10th consecutive year of growth for the global music industry. So it is in fact growing. So when you hear somebody come out and say, no, there's no music, you have to reconcile that cognitive dissonance between what statistical fact and what what a singular artist is saying. And then that's where the analysis comes in. So I think I'm just naturally skeptical of any artist saying any sort of statements that are absolutist, because generally speaking, that's going to be specific to them and not actually accurate for the entire global musician experience. And yeah, there's someone that might listen to that and think, oh, let me just give up because that's my favorite artist. And, she says there's nothing going on in the music business. Let me just give up.
I do feel like if you're going to give up, you were going to give up anyways. It's just like, what do you call it? Whatever bias, like when the answer
confirmation bias.
Confirmation bias, yeah. I have a slightly different take on this. I think that everybody and nobody has bad advice, right? Like I can learn from everybody, but also it could just be terrible advice. I just don't want to single her out because I could show you. I saw the clip and I laughed because I was like, Dane is going to see this and hate it. But I could show you 10 or 15 clips of music executives saying the same thing. There's no money in music. Therefore, we can go back episodes on here and you hear me saying basically the same thing, that there's no money in music. So like, no money doesn't mean no money. It just means no money to me, right? Which is what y'all just established, right? So she's saying there's no money for me here. And if we even look at her come up, like she blew up in 2020, I think, doing remixes and freestyles, phenomenal artist. Then she's been on like some TV shows. She's had some different opportunities, whatever. I think when she's breaking it down and probably looking at her revenue streams, music is not something that really pays her. So she's probably telling artists there's no money in music because she's not getting paid from it, but she is known as an artist. I feel like Lady London probably gets more on appearance fees than anything, right? Podcast interviews, whatever. I don't know if she's getting paid for those, but she does a really good job of keeping her profile high. And I think being a super genuine person because people say so many good things about her. So I think that's why she's lasted. So I don't want to say it's bad advice. It's specific advice. But for me, it's like if I'm coming in as an artist and I hear there's no money in music, but I still want to make music, it allows me to start thinking about diversification immediately. So I don't necessarily think this is a bad advice because I also think that if you end up making money, this is like the failure thing that I just said, just try it and fail. If you end up winning, cool. But like, just try it and be like, oh, I need to be open-minded to other options. Same like we were talking about Ebony Beach Club. And Dame was like, well, it seems like he's already leaning in a direction towards diversification. He just needs to keep leaning that way. We're literally just saying, to me, similar things, just differently. If you're in this industry and you want to make money, you've got to diversify. The percentage of artists who are making their full-time living off of just streaming, I think is significantly lower than maybe a decade or 15 years ago when you could say, oh, I'm making my money exclusively off of performance, like selling my music and performing, right? So it's like, even now compared to 2020, like as a music artist, your music could be something else. It could, like she said, it's in that interview, she's like, oh, it's just your foundation. It's what you're known for, right? So I think that I think saying taking advice from artists doesn't make sense is the same as saying it doesn't matter. People on the internet don't make sense. So it doesn't matter if it's an artist or a quote unquote music business guru. It doesn't matter if it's us. If you've had a whole different lived experience, you're still going to think it's bad advice. I say take it with a grain of salt, evaluate what people are saying. And then if somebody says something that immediately strikes you as wrong, personally, I hold it for a second. I'm like, well, what are they trying to say? Or maybe what is it about this that I don't enjoy? But I can't say that her advice is inherently bad. Like, I don't necessarily disagree with it because it's very specific. But to me, it's a cautionary tale to say, damn, if Lady London is my favorite artist and she said there's no money here, but I'm still determined to make it, let me start looking under the hood and thinking about ways that I can actually make it in this industry and not get stifled when my form of creativity is what I want to feed me.
Yeah, and again, I didn't want to make this about Lady London specifically, and it wasn't even really advice that she was giving. She was like, it's just factually wrong. However, now that I'm looking at the music that she's putting out or has put out, I'm seeing last year she has a release. She had a release in March that was a single, and then last year looks like a collab single, and then another single. So she released 2 singles and then 1 this year. Like, for people that do want to know, to give yourselves a higher chance at making money in music, you're gonna have to put out a lot more music than that. But again, this may not be her business model. And some people choose not to lean heavy into music because they feel like they can allocate their resources and get a better return elsewhere. That's okay. And that's another conversation that we can have. But again, I think somebody sitting in my seat or having the perspectives that we have, like, we can have a fuller conversation because we can talk about like different paths as opposed to, like, I'm not going to argue with you whether there's money in music. If you think that, I'm just going to, keep it pushed because it's just a wild thing to say, because the same artists that will tell you that there's no money in music will then turn around and tell you that, you should own your masters and protect your masters at all costs. Like, those two things.
Yeah, because then what's the point?
Those two things don't make no sense, right? And I said it in the video. It's like, if you think there's no money in music, the ultimate play would be to get yourself popping, get the biggest advance possible, and don't give a shit about your masters because you're not going to see $1 after that advance anyway. But we don't say that. We say, ownership is important. But I didn't really mean to go down that path, but I just would caution artists. Like, that's why it's so important to learn the business. And again, understand the entire board so that when you do hear advice, if it's something, you should know if it's something that it applies to you or it doesn't. And I just hear a lot of advice from artists that's so specific to their experience that it can really fuck some people up and be discouraging. Or you just kind of jump into this box and you're completely blindsided by, other things that can be helping you.
I'm caught between those two worlds where it's like, on the one hand, you don't want to give bad advice, or like, I would feel bad saying something like chasing placements is dead because I stopped doing it, when I have peers who are multimillionaires doing that. But then I would also feel wrong coddling people and saying, well, because a lot of people will just quit, and it's like, maybe that's good. Because, if this advice is going to, if me saying, I don't know, if I said some dumb absolutist shit that is right for my experience, if I'm like, don't go on tour just because I'm tired of touring. And an artist is like, man, I was planning a tour, I canceled my tour, and their tour could have been that point, that tipping point for their career, and then they just give up after that. It's kind of like, yeah, I'm making the Erinn face because it's like, that's on you. You need to be an adult here and you need to have some discernment. So I don't know. It's a tough spot to be in. Do we have time? I just want to.
Well, last thing. Like, to me, if you're talking to somebody that kind of knows what they're talking about, if like the answer is it depends, and they can explain like the different scenarios in which whatever you're talking about could be true or false, because that is the true answer to most things in the music industry at this point. It's hard to give just blanket advice that just applies to everyone outside of like be consistent. That's probably the main one. It's just like, hey, you got to be consistent. Nobody, I don't think, maybe somebody will argue that, but anyway, Payne, you wrap it up with whatever you got.
Yeah, I just wanted I'll just cap it off with some advice, and I have two stories. It just has to do with communicating and writing and verifying and being on top of your business. So when I was on the tour, there was this final big performance, right? And it required, so I was DJing on the tour, and I was with a percussionist named Tay. And the final culminating event was a full-on jazz band, very academic. It was run by led by a professor. And so I've never DJ'd as a member of a jazz band. So it required a whole day of rehearsal. So there are all these, I'm getting flooded with emails, because I'm running my business, and then there's a lot going into this final this final Latasha Barnes performance. And I'm checking my email at like 11 at night in a dark van. We're being driven back from whatever event we just played. And so there's this long email from that professor, and I didn't read the last line, which was, also, by the way, for this rehearsal, you're going to need to provide your own speakers. Didn't read it. So I show up to the rehearsal thinking everything's good. I'm carrying all my equipment up these ancient university limestone steps. I get set up and like, where do I plug in? The dude looks at me like I'm crazy. It's like, I told you to bring your own speakers. I'm like, oh shit. So I had to run home right quick and load up speakers and get back. It all worked out in the end, but I'm like, you told me that? And my first instinct was, you didn't tell me that because I didn't read it. Well, it's because I was exhausted, and I could make a million excuses and say I was tired. This was like the 10th email of the day regarding this particular event and the logistics. But ultimately, none of that matters because I'm an adult and I could have read that email. And I should have read that email, and I didn't read the email, and there are consequences of that. Luckily for me, the consequence was just feeling like a sucker and then having to drive an additional 20 minutes. But contrast that with an experience I had yesterday, which was, and I don't know if anyone's even interested in reading, like, this is a mess. I guess some rapper jumped out the window on me on Threads and said, I paid you for some beats and you gave them for someone else. It was a lease. This is the reason why whenever I do any business, people want to get on the phone. I'm not getting on the phone because it becomes your word versus mine. And I want transparency and peace of mind. And trust me, this proves that that method is the best for everyone, and like, he got disrespectful. I didn't call him anything. Are you laughing at the pink thong thing?
Yes.
Yeah. This guy's thinking about taking my shirt off and undressing me and caressing my body. It got weird.
Put it back up. I got to read that one again. Put it back up.
All right.
I feel like men are so interesting with y'all's insults because it's like, I looked at that, I'm like, I would have never even thought of anything from, like, that was such a, like you said, he had to think about undressing you. That's so interesting.
Well, I got to read it so people might just be listening.
Okay, read it. All right.
He says, bullshit, no, I'm looking for the receipts now. I was waiting for you to say some dumb shit for a minute so I could lift your shirt and expose that pink thong you got on. Fuck out of here.
But why would a thong be under your shirt?
And why would it be pink? It's blue.
Why do they escalate so fast on the internet? This shit is crazy. That's why we got to start this boxing reality show ASAP.
Oh no, he wanted to fight me. He told me to come by and we can meet up. And my whole thing was like, all right, if you have the receipts, please post them because I like doing like, and give me a round of applause because I didn't call him any insult. Was the applause gone?
Play the laugh track now because this is the appropriate time for that.
Oh, it is kind of an applause. Maybe that's why it's labeled applause. It laughs and then it claps.
Okay. Well, that works here. That's a good combination. So my whole thing is, this happens to me all the time. So I'm used to it. And I've just learned to very plainly state, hey, here's a copy of the conversation. We did not negotiate for, because usually I'm giving crazy deals. I looked up this guy's name in all my accounting and I couldn't find it because it's a unique name. And maybe he's not using his real name. I don't know, but I couldn't find anything. He clearly couldn't find anything because he resorted to sexualizing my attire rather than posting the actual receipts that he claims that he has. And which I would have loved because I was trying to find them so I could post them myself. Cause I'm like, look, I really don't think I'm wrong here. Cause I don't resell exclusive beats. That would be really messed up of me. And I'm better than that. So, let's
He
work
could at
this out.
least link this song though. That's what I'm saying. He could at very least I can't find the receipts, but here's the song and here's where you gave it away. It's like you're just making shit up at this point. And if it really was a song that you bought, he probably went back and discovered where it says that it's a lease or whatever. And he might have been, I've seen this happen before. Young producer, young artist, whatever, they get upset about something. Then they realize years later, this grudge that they've been holding is just due to their own ignorance. But they've built their whole personality off of hating this one person. So they got to just live with that. You know what I'm saying?
Well, this guy is older than me, according to him. He called me a jit. He said he was an old man. My bad, Dan.
I'm super big on accountability, and that's something that I guess the new age term is like borderline crash out on certain things. Like there have been times where like it gets so frustrating for me that I'll crash out when somebody is clearly just not accepting accountability for something. It is a huge pet peeve of mine, and it's so unproductive. So that could be my last word of advice for this episode. It's like, please take accountability. And the earlier you take accountability, the easier it is, right? As soon as you entrench yourself in, not taking accountability, your ego, it gets harder to accept accountability the longer it takes for you to accept accountability. So out the gate, just accept it. It's a lot easier. It's like when, you don't know somebody's name. Right. And when you refuse in that moment, just to be like, hey, man, I apologize. I know we met, but, I forgot your name. What's your name again? It's a lot easier to do that in that very next interaction than if you don't ask. And now you're 10 interactions in. Now you really look crazy if you don't know this person's name because you've had 10 interactions with them. So just accept it's not an exact apples to apples comparison, but it's like, accept accountability as early as possible because that's the easiest moment to do it. You let it play out. Now you really look crazy.
And then just don't be on 100 all the time. You know what I mean? And that's why I shared the first story because accountability used to be really difficult for me. I think it's hard for a lot of people. So I understand. But you don't have to be reactive every single time. Because I didn't reach out to the guy. He could have reached out privately and said, hey, I have an issue with this. Let's resolve this. He could have even said everything he said there, but privately, but he had to say it publicly. I don't know why. Then he created an accountability trap for himself because he said, I'm going to post the receipts. He didn't post the receipts because they don't exist. And if they do exist, they probably prove him wrong. But having that, and if I'm wrong, post the receipts because I'll fix it. But regardless, my advice to producers and artists, I think this is advice to everybody, is know exactly what you're agreeing to and communicate that clearly on both sides. Because when I'm having this conversation, look, I've seen producers, we've covered this. I think it was one of our favorite producer scammers who's also kind of from Erinn's hometown. So we're not going to say his name. But he was
not too much on Atlanta. Chill.
It's just, this was a very unfair. He doesn't live there now, so I don't know if Atlanta claims him anymore. But he was running ads that said he was selling exclusive beat packs, and it's like, these aren't exclusive because they're in an advertisement that's seen by hundreds of thousands of people, and anyone can buy that pack multiple times. So there are producers out there who use deceptive language. There are artists who make purchases without really fully reading agreements or even asking questions, you know what I mean? Or they make assumptions, you know, like when I'm interacting with artists, I say, you know what, we're not doing the exclusive, but I'll give you the unlimited rights, which is the best license, you know, the best non-exclusive license. And then people are like, but I paid $50 for that, so it's mine. And I'm like, no, here's the screenshot. And then it's cool because it's in writing. So keep stuff in writing, producers. Don't everyone just keep stuff in writing. Don't be on the phone. Don't talk each other's ear off, because you're gonna forget what business was discussed. Keep it in writing.
I got to cut. We got to close this out. This episode was brought to you by Two Lost. Use the code MEC, 3 months free. Holla at us next week. Peace.